brings us to the point in the story where we're at our wits' end. We've done everything we can to survive, and it doesn't look good. So in Acts chapter 27, Paul takes the stage. He stands before the men, and he doesn't, I won't read to you what he tells them first because he was a little sarcastic, and I don't want to put that part of the message, but we're going to start reading in verse 23, and this is the point of the message, and then I want to tell you how the story ends, okay? So Acts chapter 27, and I'll start reading in verse 23. Oh, I have to do verse 22, I'm sorry, 22. But now I urge you to keep up your courage, because not one of you will be lost. Only the ship will be destroyed. So, I mean, that's kind of good news, bad news. I have good news and bad news. The bad news is the ship's going to be destroyed. The good news is no one's going to be lost. Okay, so that's good news, bad news. Here's what Paul has to say. Last night, an angel of the God whose I am and whom I serve stood beside me. And he said, "Do not be afraid. You must stand trial before Caesar. You're going to make it to Rome," is what he's saying. "And God has graciously given you the lives of all who sail with you." I'll read that again. "You must stand trial before Caesar, and God has graciously given you the lives of all who sail with you. So keep up your courage, men, for I have faith in God that it will happen just as he told me." Now here comes more bad news. "Nevertheless, we must run aground on some island." So, here's the rest of the story. The ship begins to get battered. They run aground on a sandbar, starts falling apart. Paul says, "Jump, everybody jump. If you can swim, swim. If you can't swim, find a plank. Somehow get to shore." Miraculously, they all get to shore. Just as Paul predicted, not one life was lost. Not one. As soon as they get on shore, I love Paul. They're wet, they're soaking wet, they're drenched. Paul starts gathering wood. Paul takes the lead. He's gathering the wood. He's seeing what we need to take care of. The island people recognize, oh, we have some visitors. They come in, and now Paul, they got the fire going. They're all getting warm. Paul finds out some people on the island are sick. They ask Paul to go pray for them. Paul goes and prays for them. Everybody on the island that's sick starts getting healed. Paul just starts doing what he does. He preaches and he prays and he's helping people. After a certain amount of time, it doesn't really clarify how much time, but after the amount of time, it's time to leave. And it's always fascinating me every time I read this story, because remember, the boat was destroyed. But when it was time to leave, in God's providence, a boat comes in. They get on the boat, and the Bible tells us that every need they had was supplied. Remember, they had lost everything in the ocean. Their boat, they lost everything. And yet when they left that island, they had everything they needed. And so, as the story goes, Paul makes it to Rome, stands trial, the rest is history. Today, I'm focusing on this part of the story. Paul was on a boat. And with him on this boat, the captain, the crew, his guards, the people who were to make sure he got to Rome, all these people on the boat. Now listen, I want to make sure you capture this today, because you have to capture how important you are. In this story, what I want to communicate to you today is this. Because of Paul, not one person on the ship lost their lives. I'm putting forth today this. if Paul had not been on the boat, if God had not purposed for Paul to get to Rome to stand trial, because of Paul, no one perished. And so I want to fill in a couple blanks today, and I want you to catch up with what I'm trying to communicate. And by the end, you'll say, okay, I see what he's saying here, okay? So let's fill in a couple blanks, and then we'll elaborate a little further. Number one person's presence can change everything. One person's presence can change everything. Those of you who, at your workplace, there was a missing link and there's something not getting done and suddenly someone shows up and, oh, I can't, this person makes such a difference. One person makes a difference at work. One person makes a difference at home. One person makes it. Hey, Jeff, would you do me a favor? Would you please go close that door for me, please? Thank you. Okay, one person makes a difference. In our story today, I want you to see the difference that one person, Paul, made. Because Paul was on the ship, look at the difference that was made. Ready, Anna? First, because of Paul, the angel came to Paul and spoke to Paul. Paul was able to predict everything's going to be okay. Isn't it nice to know when stuff's going on, you're in the boat, you're shipwrecking, you're crashing, the boat's falling apart, you're losing all your... Isn't it nice to know that someone can stand there boldly and confidently and predict it's going to be okay? The God of who I am and who I serve has promised me it's going to be okay. One man's prediction changed the countenance and the hope and the courage of the entire ship. So one person can make the prediction to restore the courage. Secondly, not only did Paul predict that it would be okay, God chose Paul to be the pilot of the situation. He guided them through the situation. Hey, get rid of the supplies. Go eat. You're going to have to eat. If you can swim, swim. If you can't, get on the plank. Paul was able to guide them through his courage, through his words, through his wisdom. He was able to pilot them through that very difficult situation. Everyone else is fear. They're hungry. And Paul's like, hey, let's get through this together. Follow my lead. And so he was able to predict that it would be okay. He was able to pilot them, get them through that difficult situation. And not only did he predict, not only did he pilot, Anna, what else did he do? You're going to love this one. Because of Paul, everyone on the ship protected. I want to tell you something. I'm not proud of this story. I'm not a big fan of water. I've told you this many times. I'm not a big fan of water. I don't know if I ever passed the swimming class when my mom tried to get me swimming. I didn't like being underwater. I think it was Myrtle Beach. I think we were in Myrtle Beach, and the waves, we were having a blast in the waves. The waves were overhead, we were having a blast. And then it came time to get back in, and I'm telling you, I don't know what happened. Tide must have come in. I don't know what happened. But I'm struggling to get back to shore. I'm struggling. And honest to God is my witness today. Halfway back, I began to wonder, am I going to make it back to shore? I actually was asking God to take care of my girls and take care of my wife, because I'm not going to make it back. I don't know what happened. I walked out, but walking back, the water was over my head, and I was treading water as much as I could. And I was like, I'm not going to make it back. And I want to tell you something. When you're gasping for air and you're not sure you're going to survive, it's hard to think straight. It's hard to think clearly. But I want to tell you something. When you know that God is protecting you, when you know that God is watching over you, you know that you're going to make it through there. Because of Paul, God's purpose for him to get to Rome, every life was protected. Okay? So, he predicted, he piloted, he protected, and then, because of Paul, I believe this with all my heart, as I made the point, when it was time to leave that island, every need was provided. Provided. What would have happened to that ship if Paul went on there? I don't know. Maybe God would have spared them anyway. But what I'm saying is this. The way the story unfolds and the way that Paul stood up and the way that Paul addressed the men, the way that he guided them through that, I'm not sure they would have made it. They were ready to jump ship. They were bailing out. They were ready to die before the ship collapsed. So because of one man, the fortunes of every person on that ship affected in these ways. Okay? Now, here's the point of the message, and then I'll finish it up before we go eat. Here's the point. Are you listening? Who is in your boat today? Or you could ask yourself this question. Whose boat have you chosen to get into today? Every one of us choose every day whose boat we're getting in. I get in this group of friends and I like the direction they're headed in life, and that's the boat I'm getting in. I'm on board with them. Or I'm having a boat and I want people to be influenced by where I'm heading, and I want people in my boat. Who's in my boat? Who am I influencing? Who am I trying to get from point A to point B? Whose boat am I in? And listen, every one of you, I hope, know this today. Every one of you that are seeking God's will, and every one of you who are seeking purpose, know you're trying to get from point A to point B. It's a journey. It's a journey. Jerry and I were talking last night. He was talking a little bit about his journey, asking when he started at the company he's at, and he began to tell me some stories and some things he had been through, and together we just said, wow, isn't life an incredible journey? And in that journey, there are plenty of ups, and you're excited about things that happen. And in your journey, there are plenty of disappointments and hurts and pains as well. And the question that has to be asked today by me, hopefully answered by you, is this. In your journey, in your sphere of influence, in your boat, who's the one? Who's the one that everyone else is affected because of that one person? Because I'm blessed, they're blessed. Because I may have brought misfortune because of some of my choices, now they're suffering those consequences. Who's being affected in a positive way and a negative way because of me? And I'm asking you to answer that question, but it's really an easy answer, isn't it? Because every one of us is that one. Every one of us has some people that we are influencing. Every one of us. We can't escape it. And so today, what I want to tell you this, just like in Paul's case, your life is no different. Because of you, God can help other people know it's going to be okay. You can be the one to help pilot them through the good times and the bad times. You can be the person that, because I know I have a plan for this person, and these folks will be, I will protect them as well, and I will provide every need for them. It comes down to one. You. Me. As Christians, we carry the most responsibility. We're trying to influence people in the most critical area of their life. It's the only area of their life where eternity matters. Our Christian faith, our belief in God, our following Him, our loving Him, our serving Him. That's the only eternal significant thing in life. It's the most critical thing that we recognize as the one thing we must take care of. And so today I'm asking you to be the one. Be the one that provides the hope through your knowledge and prediction that it's going to be okay. you're in God's hands. You will survive. You may be the one that God has to speak to and offer some guidance and some encouragement along the way. You may be the one that because of you, everyone is protected and that everyone is provided for. If we're going to be that one, and I know everyone in this room wants to be that one or you wouldn't be here today. That's an assumption I make and I hope I'm right about that. And the great thing about this message is no matter how old we are today, how young, how old, how middle-aged we are, we're all influencing someone. It all matters today. And so, let's look at Paul's life in this situation through this journey of the open sea, and let's look what we can learn from him so that we can become that one. So, number 2 in your notes. That person, the one, is positioned by one characteristic. One thing stands out in my mind about Paul's life, and on this specific journey, one thing stands out. And with all the confidence that I have, I proclaim it was this one thing that allowed Paul to be the one man to cause all this. Here's that one thing. Are you ready? That person, hopefully us, hopefully me, is positioned by one characteristic. Paul was a his purpose driven man. The only thing that mattered in Paul's life, God's will. What is God's purpose for me? And so his purpose, God's purpose. Why was Paul on the ship in the first place? It was God's will for him to get to Rome to stay in trial. That's the only reason he was on the ship. And that's all that mattered to Paul. All the trouble, all the hunger, all the waves, all the seasickness, all the fear. He went through all of that for one reason. Because God wants me to get to Rome. And with his help, I will get there. And so not only on the boat, the hardship, the trials, the hunger, the seasickness, all those things. Now we're on the island, a deserted island. Whatever villages are there, he's there helping, he's there. And so Paul goes through who knows how long. He suffers everything so that he can fulfill God's purpose for his life. Paul was a his purpose driven man. Ladies and gentlemen, today, that's all that matters for you and me today. Am I doing God's will? Am I deep enough in my faith to know what I should be doing, and with all of my heart and with all of God's help, am I doing his will? And I want to tell you something. When you're doing God's will, the screen went away. Can we go back one, Anna? I think we can. Yeah. When you are pursuing God's will and you are committed to God's will in the good times, the tough times, the very dangerous times, when you're pursuing God's will, this is what we can expect from a loving Heavenly Father. And so today what I'm asking you to do as I unfold what Paul reminds us, what he teaches us, I'm asking you today to do this. As we wrap up this message today, evaluate your life. Where does fulfilling God's purpose rank in your heart? Your purpose as a husband or wife, your purpose as a child, your purpose as a student, your purpose as a Christian, as a church worker, whatever that is. The desire to know and do his will. Where does that rank in your life? When you put it first, this is what we expect. Okay, how do we get there? Ready? Here's what we know about Paul. So I'm going to let Anna skip up to where we were, his purpose. And now, here's the first thing about being a his purpose driven person. It's the very first characteristic. You cannot skip it. You cannot avoid it. You must embrace it. Ready, Anna? You must be a person willing to submit. When Paul got knocked off the donkey, and God revealed to him who Jesus was, from that moment on, Paul surrendered and submitted his life to God. It was no longer the way I used to do things. It's all about how you want me to do it now. It's no longer where I'm trying to get to. It's no longer what I'm trying to do. It all became for Paul. Where do you want me to get? How do you want me to get there? Who do you want me to get to? What can I do to fulfill your purpose? Submission, ladies and gentlemen, if you haven't figured out by now, is not an easy thing. We come into the world as babies, as infants, as cute and as adorable as we are. We come in kicking and screaming for my way. I want to sleep when I want to sleep. I want to eat when I want to eat. And as we get older, we find out other things that I want more, and I want more, and we want my way. Those of you who have babies know that. Those of you who have or have had teenagers, you know that. Those of you who have or have had college students, you know that. And those of you who have children who just never seem to leave the nest, you know that too. We just keep coming back, don't we? We just keep coming back. We move in their backyards and we keep coming. Submission is probably the greatest achievement. It would take all the commitment, all the self-control, all the discipline that you can muster to surrender your will to His. But I want to tell you something. Without surrendering your will, those things that we've talked about earlier, not possible in their fullest degree. And so Paul surrendered, he submitted his will to God's. He was willing to go hungry, he was willing to go places, he was willing to be beaten, he was willing to be put in jail, he was willing to do whatever it took. Submission. Secondly, after we submit to God, now we begin to seek God. We love, as children, the seek. Remember hide and go seek. Remember the cookie jar? Where did Mom hide the cookie jar? We are naturally born seekers. The challenge becomes seeking the right thing, things, and in this case, seeking God. This past week, Mary and Charles, the family, suffered a loss. Mary's grandmother passed away, and it was my opportunity and privilege to do the memorial service. And at the memorial service, one of the key factors was Grandma's huge desire to know God. She had Bibles, and she treasured her Bibles, and she could quote the Bible. And the point I was making at the service was this. For every person you know, that's how many views of who God is. Everyone has an opinion of who God is, what He likes, what He doesn't like, what He wants you to do, what doesn't. And everyone has an opinion on that. And that's why seeking God cannot be a casual endeavor. It will take everything within you to search His Word to see what it says. It will take everything within you to surround yourself with the right people who are in balance and pursuing that, to find the right church. Hopefully you found that church anywhere, so hopefully you have. But keeping God first. What does Matthew 6:33 tell us? Seek ye first the kingdom of God. Write this Bible verse down, please, right there. 2 Chronicles chapter 7, verse 14. I don't have it on the screen for you. I apologize for that. But on your notes, please copy that. Sometime this week, I'd like you to do two things. One, read chapters 27 and 28 of Acts. I'd like you to do that. And then, secondly, I want you to read and do your best, even if you can memorize 2 Chronicles, not Corinthians, that's the New Testament, Chronicles, the Old Testament, 2 Chronicles, chapter 7, verse 14. This is what you'll read, or something like it. This is my version. Yours will be something like it. I reread this again this week in my devotions, and it inspires me every time. Here's what it says. If my people, who are called by my name, he's talking about the church. I know we have issues with people outside the church and how rotten they are and how bad they are. And we can't believe how far we've fallen. But inside the church, God is saying, if my people, ready, will humble themselves and pray and seek my face and turn from their wicked ways, then I will hear from heaven and will forgive their sin and will heal their land. It all begins with who we seek. We must seek God with all of our heart. Listen, can you imagine? We all have our bad days, don't we? I mean, we have a few good days, then we have some bad days. And in those bad days, it's tough to concentrate. It's tough to focus. We want to have pity parties. We want to just hide and disappear. Paul's life was filled with what we would consider hard days. Beatings, false accusations, shipwrecks, wild animals, nakedness, hunger, filled with it. And through all those circumstances, his heart's desire, seek him, know him. So we must submit to God, we must seek him. Next, I love this. When Paul shows up on the island, let me make sure I got the right point. Let's see what was, I think I'm right here, but I'm sure it should say submerge. I like that. When Paul got on the island, now listen, we've been out on the open sea, the waves are beating, the hurricane's blowing, we've thrown all our supplies over, men are threatening to jump overboard, I've swam to shore, I'm barely alive. When Paul got to shore, he gathered his breath. Most of us would be saying, "Oh Lord, I've been through enough. Come and send somebody to help me. Please come and help me." I love Paul. As soon as he hit the sand, he submerged himself in his purpose. He started gathering wood. He started rallying the troops. This is what we need to do. This is what we need to do next. Someone came and said, "Oh, my dad's sick." Paul went and prayed for him, healed him. He heals. Let's bring everybody. And he submerged himself. There was no pity party. There was no, I've lost everything, and now what am I going to do? And boo-hoo, boo-hoo. None of that. There's some things we can do. There's some things we must do. And he submerged himself in his purpose. Listen, there's a time to grieve. There's a time to regroup. There's a time to regain your strength. But there's never a time to give up. There's never a time to say, "Woe is me, it's never going to get better. Now look what we've lost. We don't have anything." He submerged himself in God's purpose. He built the fire. He gathered the wood. He healed the people. And he stayed focused and submerged himself in his purpose. And then that led to every need being met. He didn't sit around wondering, how's God going to take care of me now? Now look at my situation. Now what's he going to do? He just did what he was called to do. And he kept moving forward. That's good advice for every one of us. Last but not least, after he submitted, after he sought, after he submerged, and then the boat showed up. Now he's on Paradise Island. You know what he did? The boat showed up, and Paul surged ahead. Do you know anybody today that's kind of stuck? They're just stuck. They're stuck in their circumstances. They're stuck in their past. They're stuck in I don't know what to do. And I love this story because when the ship showed up, Paul said, "Ooh, I'm moving on. There's something out there for me. I'm surging ahead." Today, if you want to be a big influencer in your life, you can't be a stuck-in-the-mud kind of person. You got to shake off the past. You got to shake off the hurt. You got to shake off the pain. You got to shake off all that I've lost. You've got to shake off all the hard times I've been through. You got to shake that off and surge forward. Listen, I want to be very careful here. I'm not saying that we don't need compassion. I'm not saying that we don't need a pat on the back. I'm not saying that we don't need encouragement. We need every one of those things. But I'm telling you today, for your encouragement and for mine, when you've seemingly been in the worst storm, you've seemingly lost everything that's good that you know is good, and it's gone and lost, there comes a point when you've got to re-engage and get back into life, get back into your purpose, submerge yourself into what God is asking you to do in that moment. And when your opportunity comes, and there's something there that invites you to move ahead, to join into this cause, surge ahead with confidence and courage and hope. You be the one that brings everyone that you're influencing, everyone that's in your boat. You be the one that brings the boat safely to port. Safely to that place where you know that you are doing God's will. You may be tattered, you may be worn, you may be beaten. But I want to tell you, there's no feeling knowing that I am doing God's will. And His purpose means more to me than anything in this world. And that's what my life is all about. When we live at that level, God is awesome. God is greater than our discomforts. He is greater than our pains. He is greater than our disappointments. He will raise you to levels of encouragement and courage and hope. And you will be the one who makes the difference in the boat. Father, thank you so much today that you have created each one of us in special and unique ways, and you have placed within each one of us a purpose, an eternal purpose, a calling, if you will. And Lord, it's our privilege to submit to you and to seek you and to submerge ourselves into your purpose and to surge ahead as you call us forward. Lord, my prayer today is for each person in this room today that you have called to be influencers, you have called to be leaders. And Lord, today we submit ourselves to you. We ask you to teach us to seek you with all of our heart. That we'll be committed, that whatever the circumstances, we will submerge ourselves in your purpose. And Lord, when you call us forward, you call us upward, you call us out, we will surge with all the strength that you give us. Help us at Lighthouse Community Church today, Lord, to be difference makers. May we be the one who brings the courage and the hope and the guidance. Thank you today, Lord, for this special calling, this special privilege. And now, Lord, we say a special blessing for our time together this afternoon, fellowship. The Bible speaks a lot about fellowship and how important it is for the believers to meet together, to share our stories, and to even dine together. It's very specific. And so for this opportunity today, we thank you and pray you'll bless our time. And the food that we're about to receive, bless it to our bodies. In Jesus' holy name, amen. Amen. Hey, who's number one?